If you've spoken to me at all about this show, you'll know that I was hooked immediately after the opening scene. But let me give some background info first. Arcane is a story that is set in the League of Legends universe that follows the creative direction of Riot Games and the French animation company Fortiche. This origin story focuses on a cast of characters from the LOL games, with two main parallel storylines. Arcane follows an upstairs-downstairs narrative style, sort of a tale of two cities, where we see the lives of the upper-class citizens of Piltover and the lower-class citizens of the Underside. The unique art and animation style blurs the lines of realism and art, and many have praised it for sharing the lore of the popular MOBA game in this cinematic way. Now I know what you're thinking. League of Legends. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've played it, or maybe you're just the kind of person who doesn't watch animated things because it's for kids. Bleh. But let me stop that train of thought for a second and ask you this. Would you want to deprive yourself of witnessing beautiful and intricate storytelling just because you don't enjoy gaming? As someone who doesn't play League but is familiar with the game, I can confidently say that you do not need prior knowledge of the lore to enjoy the show. However, if you are into gaming and love lore-adapted stories, you're in for a satisfying watch. If you're not into watching it at all, then I hope this gives you an incentive to check it out. So one of the first things I noticed throughout the 9-episode series is that Arcane does such a masterful job of showing versus telling. You might be thinking, Isabella, what does that mean? And fear not, because I'm an ex-film major and I can tell you. So the art of showing your audience what you want them to know, rather than telling them, is something that I find many writers struggle with. What this basically means is that rather than word vomiting with lots of exposition, aka backstory, you show your audience with visual cues and cinematography what you want them to know. Let's take a look at episode 1. The opening scene begins with a dissolve into a blood-red sky, with a young girl singing a haunting tune, which of course the lyrics foreshadow the story that is to come. The streets are full of rubble, with the aftermath of what looks like civil war, and the red skies being a motif that much blood has been shed. There's an explosion and a body flies backwards from the impact. And as we hear the body hit the floor, an armored figure emerges from the fog and fires a shot at it for good measure. Now, without literally going frame by frame, although I would happily do that if I had more time, there's a lot of interesting techniques used here. I feel like a lot of stories would try to use a narrator or some type of text on the screen to give context to the story. So why would they choose to begin the story in this way? What was their goal? To me, I think that the writers and cinematographers' aim was to capture the audience's attention with strong, shocking imagery. Their goal was to tell you that this is a serious and gruesome story. The strong red color of the sky sets up the color as being a motif for violence and death. The sounds of the fire crackling, gunshots, and the girl's song add a chilling tone to the scene. And of course, when we see the armored figure shoot down an already dead person, you immediately have an understanding that there was no mercy for the people who were attacked here. Fast forwarding to the next scene, there's a time skip where we see our two girls aged up, along with two teenage boys. We see them scaling the side of the buildings as they climb the rooftop with determined expressions. In contrast to the scene before, the skies are bright and blue, showing us a starkly different atmosphere. Our pink-haired girl, Vi, and blue-haired girl, Powder, look out at the city, and the medium shot pans out quickly into a long establishing shot of the grand city of Piltover. One thing I noticed in this episode was the reiteration of above and below type imagery. As I mentioned earlier, Arcane is an upstairs-downstairs narrative that often utilizes vertical camera movements as a way to convey location, relationships between characters, as well as power imbalances within the story. When the four characters overlook Piltover, we see airships and a large castle, signifying that Piltover is a place of innovation and progress. In contrast, we later see the group descend back to where they live, and boy is it a grim sight to see. The further the group descends from above, the less we see the light from the sky. The color grading has lost all bright hues, and in their place we have a color palette of murky grays, greens, and browns. The underground city has a cyberpunk-esque aesthetic with a little bit of garbage dump vibes. The neon green hue and foggy air is meant to show how toxic and polluted the air is, further displaying the differences between the city above. The topsiders, as they call them in this universe, seem to live luxurious lives, while the undersiders seem to be living in the slums. There's so much I'd love to unpack in terms of social and political messages that are conveyed, but needless to say, I truly believe that the storytelling is enhanced by the way the cinematographers have blocked out their scenes. I hope that this gives you a bit of an understanding of what I meant when I said Arcane shows versus tells their audience what they want to convey. I barely touched the surface of what impresses me about this show, but to summarize, I think that Riot Games and Fortiche have created a universe that is so immersive and believable that it's easy to get sucked in from the jump. To sing a few more praises, the sound mixing in this show is so good. So audiophiles, if you're into some nice, crispy sound effects, you're in for a treat. The use of color as a literary device for storytelling is intentional and incredibly well done. And of course, this story has some of the most well-written, fleshed out, and multi-dimensional female characters I've seen in a long time. It's such a moving story that you can tell the creator spent so much time and energy imagining, and seeing their vision come alive with this animation style is just so damn entertaining. I'm not saying that you have to love all the things that I loved about this show, But honestly, I think that this show is in my top 5 things I've watched all year. I remember telling my partner this is peak cinema after the 3rd episode, and low-key I kinda stand by it. I mean, listen, minor spoiler, but episode 3 is titled The Base Violence Necessary for Change. Hello? But anyway, I'm just a sucker for cinematography and hot girls, so what do I know? Go watch Arcane and tell me what you think about it, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, and this is Bila signing off.